Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I hear the pitter patter of 4-year-old feet, so my daughter may make an appearance here. So, just so you guys know, my name is Danielle Fanfare. You are experiencing Wellness Practices with Danielle Fanfare. I am the executive director of the Heinz Center for Spirituality, Houston's downtown oasis for all kinds of growth. We intend to be a space that supports anybody and everyone who is on the journey to mental clarity and peace of mind, emotional balance and positive connections, physical wellness, and spiritual growth. And so we intend to do that. Right now, we are virtual. We have suspended all on site activities because we want to maintain the safety, the health, and the wellness of our staff, our community, our partners, our friends, our fellow healers. I have a mosquito bite. Okay. So we want to facilitate that every week. This is my little that I was telling you about. As if on cue. We want to facilitate that journey with wellness practices that we share with you every week via Facebook and Instagram Live. So if you follow the Heinz Center on either Facebook or Instagram, you can find us there. We also release these recordings via our newsletter. So if you want to go to heinzcenter.org, sign up for our newsletter, you will receive the replay of this experience as well as other invitations to grow in the areas that I just mentioned earlier. And right now, what I want us to do is I want us to really think about, every week I talk about the spirituality of a different concept. And I want us to talk about the spirituality of compassion today. The spirituality of compassion. And I want to share a story with you guys. One day, can you close it? Because it's going to be loud. One day at the Heinz Center, I was promoting our experiences by, hitting the street, guerrilla marketing style. And just, we have a beautiful building that sits on the corner of Prairie and Fannin. We have these beautiful windows that have all of our offerings on the windows. And I was standing right outside those offerings with a yoga outfit on, and I was promoting our workshops and our yoga classes and just inviting people to check it out, glance at the windows. I had on a Lululemon jacket. I had on a Lululemon black top, and I had on some Lululemon tights and my favorite Nikes, my favorite black and gold Nikes. All my Saints fans, they do everything but try and take these shoes off of my feet, my New Orleans Saints fans, because they look just like the colors of the team. And so I had my little yoga outfit on. I said I was going to dress the part today. I was going to look like a yogi so that I could invite people into the Heinz Center to experience everything that we had going on. But we particularly were trying to promote our noon yoga classes at the time. We still actually have virtual yoga classes going on right now if you want to experience a live yoga session that is restorative and connected to the time that we're living in. And so I was trying to, connect with different people, and I walked up to one young woman who was, downtown can be very intimidating. It can be very confusing if you're not used to navigating. I'm a native Houstonian, and I still get lost downtown. And so I walked up to this young woman, and I offered her a free yoga class card and said, "Can you come to the Heinz Center?" And this lady said, "I don't have any money. I'm sorry." Now, I'm an African American woman. Most of the African American women who are casually dressed downtown, one could assume that those women are either in transition, they're downtown for some services, they may be homeless, and so that was the assumption she made about me. And she was, she presented as a Caucasian woman, and she immediately recoiled and said, "I'm sorry, I don't have any money." And I was so taken aback that all I could think about saying was, "This is Lululemon. This outfit is Lululemon. Like, I'm not asking you for money, It's a sad experience, but I laugh at myself after as I think about that story, because all I could think about was the logo that I wore to validate, that I wasn't asking for anything. I was actually giving away value on the street. And as I think about that experience, and I think about what drives us to scan someone and make immediate decisions, I know that there is this very survival and preservation, self-preservation oriented intention for trying to assume by looking at someone how we can predict their behavior and how their behavior is going to impact us. And the science and the sociological and psychological community have been able to coin a term to describe this, and it's called bias. And it simply refers to literally the kind of attitudes and assumptions that we make about people based on stereotypes, and it's often subconscious. It's often something that we don't readily perceive in our conscious thinking. It is really lies beneath the surface of our conscious thinking, and it's often secondarily passed on to us through our early childhood holding environments. So secondary bias, implicit bias can be taught to us indirectly through things like our address, our street that we live on. If we live on a street that is homogenous in terms of our neighbors, right? We can learn a secondary or inherit a secondary message that these kinds of people live on this street. And so if we see someone else on this street that doesn't look like the kind of people who live on this street, we learn how to immediately identify them as an other and begin to be either suspicious or curious about why they're on this street where these kind of people live. And I don't want to oversimplify or reduce what's happening in our nation and make it appear to be that simplistic. However, if we start with little building blocks around little biases, we can begin to build a greater understanding that is a response to the question, what exactly is happening right now? Because a lot of us who have experienced injustice, racism, exclusion, being kept from an opportunity or being denied certain regular experiences on the basis of how we look. Many of us have, lots of awareness of what's going on, and there are more and more people who are who have lived insulated lives, who are truly waking up to what's happening to people around them that they were not aware of. And so the questions that I keep receiving is, I'm learning, I'm becoming aware, and I just did not understand the depth of what is actually coming to surface right now. And so I'd love for the Heinz Center's offerings for our community to be a resource for everyone who is having an experience, a reaction, who is reliving or who is waking up to for the first time the reality and the ugly truths that accompany the life that we live as Americans, right? And I think that mindfulness and a meditation is really a great tool that is less aggressive and less catastrophizing and in your face than some of the conversations that usually turn people off, that keep people really solidified and doubling down in their perspectives. I think meditation and practices that bring us to a different space of awareness really are helpful as we begin to be willing to accept and understand other people's perspectives. And I've been in both kinds of conversations where we've taken a contemplative more mindful approach to what's happening. And I've been in conversations where I'm like, listen, this is what's going on, and this is what you need to do to change it. And both conversations have a place. Today, I would love for us to explore how meditation and mindfulness can be a tool for us as we continue to navigate what our contribution to our culture is, as we begin to explore and continue to face what we're learning about ourselves and other people. Um, so, I would love to think about this through the lens of compassion. What is compassion? Um, what does it mean to truly explore this concept of what it looks like to understand the experience of someone else? And so compassion is defined as a sympathetic concern for the sufferings and misfortunes of others. When we understand and take a vested interest in the concern and the suffering of other people, we begin the journey of growing compassion in our hearts. And here's what's interesting is that compassion practices ways that grow our sense of awareness for what other people are experiencing. It actually grows what's called our emotional intelligence. And as you guys know, IQ, which is our intelligence quotient, is very important in understanding logic and details and facts and figures and reasoning. However, emotional intelligence, which is understanding the emotional energy, the emotional cues, the emotional content, and the experience of other people, also heavily impacts how we navigate our lives. And so someone with a high IQ and a low EQ is not guaranteed the life that they want to live simply because their intelligence is high. Someone with a high EQ and a lower IQ may have more experience navigating the world because they are more connected to what's happening with other people. And when we grow our sense of compassion, we grow our emotional quotient and we pull that up so that we have the benefit of both our rational mind, our ability to reason, predict, and understand logic, but we also grow our emotional intelligence, our ability to understand, communicate, and work collaboratively with other people, right? And we all know what happens when we collaborate, when we cross-pollinate experiences and ideas, innovation. We all know what happens when we include and we value and we cherish the experiences of other people. We start to grow this very, this more abundant experience together. I talked about biodiversity last week and how when you introduce more plant species into an ecosystem like a garden, the plant species actually nourish each other's roots and yield a more bountiful harvest and more sustainability for the garden. The same thing happens when we experience and grow our compassion. So, what I want us to do is, I want us to experience what happens even in this space when we decide to grow compassion through meditation. And there are specific compassion meditations. And so I was studying psychology today, and I was studying a website called Positive Psychology. And I learned that loving kindness meditation, this very specific type of way to meditate, also called a loving kindness mindfulness practice, is a way to develop the mental habit of selfless and altruistic love, encouraging the meditator to understand and accept themselves and others. And so when we engage meditation with the intent to grow compassion, we engage our ability and grow our ability to understand and accept ourselves as well as other people. And so when we engage compassion, we can begin to understand the perspective of other people. We can also begin to value and understand our own perspective. We can understand the suffering and the plight of other people while holding space for our own suffering. And we can begin to value other people's experiences without feeling like our experience is being lost. Because I think that's sometimes what prevents us from being as compassionate as we could be to other people. It's like, well, if I focus on your thing, then I'm going to lose my thing. If I value your perspective, then we're not going to circle back to my perspective. And that is a yielding of power and a yielding of privilege that I'm not willing to yield, because I'm not sure where I'm going to end up if I do, right? And so compassion, growing our capacity for compassion, helps us to really rest in our own value, rest and understand how we have a contribution to make, how we have a perspective that is valuable, and be open to that of other people, even when it's directly opposing to ours, right? And so this loving kindness meditation in Tibetan Buddhism, the Tibetan word that is used is called Tonglen. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Please correct me if you have a more accurate pronunciation, because I love language and I love to intone words correctly, because you honor the language when you learn how to pronounce things. So if Tonglen is not the correct way to pronounce that, please let me know. But it's an ancient Tibetan spiritual concept that is a method of developing and cultivating compassion for all sentient beings. And that word sentient means able to feel. So anyone who is able to feel and sense into things, this Tonglen concept in Tibetan meditation is this ability to really cultivate compassion for anybody who feels anything. And it creates a direct healing experience within one's own mind. And that Tonglen word actually translates in the Tibetan language, it translates into giving and taking. So it's the ability to awaken a compassion and receive it, and awaken compassion and send compassionate energy out from our hearts. And so it's a dual way of healing when we decide to engage in practices that specifically help us grow our capacity for compassion. If you are healing from racist experiences in your own life, it is a great way for you to cultivate a sanctuary within to begin to heal those wounds and cultivate a sense of feeling more connected, and to remind yourself of your value. It is a way to begin to understand how to speak to your pain and speak to other people who don't understand. If you are a person of privilege and you want to play your part in reducing the harm and the suffering of people who have experienced racism, compassion meditation helps for you to understand what's happening that is not your lived experience, and begin to speak compassionate, valuable energy into their experience. And so there's a way for you to experience this this dual mutual road of giving and receiving compassion by growing into these meditations, and thereby growing your capacity to be compassionate. All right. And so I want us to experience a compassion meditation that I have created specifically for the time that we live in. We are living in a time where this is the longest history of civil rights protests, anti-racism protests, police brutality protests that we have seen in our lifetime. We are constantly seeing news stories of people of color being killed by self-deputized citizens and by police officers who are abusing their authority. We are having conversations with close family, with friends, with coworkers and colleagues. There are corporations that are growing their diversity and inclusion efforts to be able to speak directly to what is happening within the walls of their corporations. We're on the precipice of a presidential election that could really radically shape our nation's reputation with the rest of the world. We are witnessing and experiencing stories every day, and there is no shortage of topics to explore and talk about when it comes to what it means to compassionately love and be kind and to understand one another's experience. And regardless of where you stand on any issue, one thing that we can all agree on is that we're all feeling something. We are all trying to self-regulate. We are all dealing with stress. We are all dealing with some kind of psychological stress and emotions. Some of us are dealing with trauma. Others of us are dealing with confusion, embarrassment, frustration, lack of understanding. All of this is amazing fertile ground for growing a garden of compassion in our hearts that manifests as compassionate action and contribution in the world. And cultivating empathy, cultivating loving kindness, cultivating and growing emotional intelligence, engaging these practices not only has a social benefit, but there are so many studies that you can look up that talk about how meditation and mindfulness, these breath and focus practices, actually regrow gray matter in your brain and make you more present and aware to details that we may miss usually, that make us more present to notice and have more information about who we're talking to and how valuable they are. And so I would have loved if the lady who had mistaken me for a homeless woman would have become a member of the Heinz Center and engaged in a mindfulness practice, had engaged in coming to some of our mindfulness courses taught in partnership with Mindful Being Houston, who would have come in and had a yoga practice, because maybe she would have been able to move through some of the cognitively dissonant factors that had led her to wrongly assess my intent in engaging her, right? And it would have, honestly, it would have been a little bit more of a pleasant experience for me too, right? And so there's an opportunity for all of us to grow in compassion and watch how compassion actually works like a multifaceted garden in our lives, grows our innovation, grows our ideas, grows our experience, and strengthens our relationships. So what I want us to do is I want us to experience a compassion meditation today. I want us to engage in noticing without judgment what comes up for us as we engage in this compassion meditation, this loving kindness practice. And I want us to be mindful about how we can continue to grow compassion in our lives. So come to a comfortable seat, do all the wiggling and the stretching and the folding and unfolding and folding again that we do when we really realize that it's time to get comfortable. Let the seat that you're sitting in support you. Trust the seat to do its job while you engage in deep diaphragmatic breathing. Everybody breathe in through your nose. Breathe out through your nose. Let's take a deep breath in through the nose. Let's breathe out through our mouths. Let's sigh it out. We may be holding more than we need to hold right now. So breathe in through the nose again. And this time, sigh it out of our mouths. Even noticing as we breathe in through the nose, Breathe out through the mouth. What comes up for you, even as you reflect on the story that I shared with you about my experience outside the Heinz Center. Breathe in through the nose. Pause and breathe out through your nose this time. Breathe in through the nose. Continue to breathe in through the nose. And I want us to bring into mind if you know any person of color who is experiencing suffering right now. Picture that person and imagine yourself sitting with that person in a meadow, in a field, a beautiful field. The sun is shining. The breeze is crisp and comfortably blowing. Picture yourself sitting across from a person of color, someone that you know personally, someone that you know of who has experienced suffering. And just notice what comes up for you as you do this. Just breathe. And let's engage in that Tonglen compassion, that taking and receiving. And let's begin with the self. Sitting with this person, noticing what's coming up for you as you notice. Imagining this person's face. Imagining this person's story, what you know of this person, whether they are personally connected to you or whether you have seen them on a social media post. Noticing what comes up for you as you imagine this person and as you imagine their suffering. What do you know of what they've experienced? What do you know of what they have been told or what they have experienced that has contributed to their suffering? And just notice what narratives, what commentary, what sensations, what thoughts arise. And as you gaze upon this person's face in your mind's eye, inwardly repeat after me as you breathe. May you have joy. May you have peace. May you be free from pain and suffering. Breathing in, breathing out. Observing from within yourself what is coming up for you. Repeat these phrases. May you have joy. May you have peace. May you be free from pain and suffering. And just noticing. Just noticing. Now focusing on the I that you connect to. When you think of the phrase, I think, therefore I am, connect to the I, the being that is that I for you, and say to yourself, may I have joy. May I have peace. May I be free from pain and suffering. Breathing in, breathing out. May I have joy. May I have peace. May I be free from pain and suffering. And maybe with a friend or in the comments or in a journal, just notice and share what comes up for you. And the only question I have for us today is, can you imagine one way that you can embody this compassion and this joy today? Can you imagine one way that you can be an agent of joy, that you can be an agent of peace, and that you can be an agent of freedom from pain and suffering in someone else's life today, maybe even the person that you envisioned? And if you can't imagine that, can you imagine a willingness to one day be an agent of joy, of peace, an agent of freedom from pain and suffering for the person that you envisioned, and even for yourself today? We are starting a 21-day compassion challenge. The Heinz Center community, our members, our friends, our healing practitioners and partners that work with us, we're inviting and involving everyone who wants to be a part in our 21-day compassion challenge. Why is 21 why is it 21 days? Because it takes 21 days to build a habit. And so if you want to be a part of that compassion challenge, go to the Heinz Center's website, www.heinzcenter.org, and sign up to join our community so that you will receive daily ways to cultivate compassion in your life, daily messages, daily practices, and daily resources. As soon as you hit that website, you will be directed to the front page where you can log in and give us your email. If you already receive our newsletter, that is great. If you want to receive information about this 21-day compassion challenge, you will need to sign up specifically for this challenge because it's a special community that we'll be sending daily updates to. So go to heinzcenter.org, become a part of our compassion challenge community, as well as go to heinzcenter.org. Consider becoming a member. Tomorrow we will engage in a healing sound bath at 5 o'clock. So register for that by going to our website as well. I'm so grateful for you. Thank you for spending this time with me. And we are looking forward to cultivating and growing our ability to really be that change that we want to see in the world by increasing our capacity for compassion and growing our ability to see past some of the biases that we don't even realize that we have, to see the total value of the people that are in front of us. I'm so excited. I'm so grateful that you will join us. You guys go in wellness and peace today. Thank you guys so much. Bye.